Good afternoon, and thank you all for coming today. It is impossible to capture all of the emotions that returning to the courthouse brings forth in me.
Yeah.
We are here to remember a fallen defender of the earth, David Gypsy Chain,
Yep.
and to remember a year spent engaged in the struggle to defend human dignity here on this space.
Yep.
Because he was brutally murdered by corporate society, I never had the chance to meet Gypsy, but the world is a poorer place for his absence. 1 year ago today, some of us were watching as the world erupted with a new movement. People by the score were arriving at Zuccotti Park in the heart of the financial district in New York City, gathering to share their disgust with the state of life in the land where they lived. We had seen this happen throughout the Middle East and Northern Africa. They had called it the Arab Spring, and now we were bearing witness to what would be dubbed the American Fall. The capitalist oligarchs had restored the system for the wealthy. The 1% had looted the treasury to pay their bonuses, while the poor were under the boot of an oppressive regime of teabaggers swept into Congress by the failure of the hope and change corporatists. For them, austerity was a religion. Occupy was a continuum of the teachers in Wisconsin taking to the streets, of a Tunisian fruit vendor, Mohamed Bouazizi, self-immolating in the square, a reaction to millions being thrown from their jobs and their homes. We called ourselves the 99% and came from all walks of life. Students buried by debt training for jobs that no longer existed, jobless people, houseless people, the disenfranchised, the despised, the derelicts, the artists and engineers, musicians, teachers, and nurses. Well, I think you get the picture. We came with more than our complaints. We came with a process. We were foolish enough to believe that everyone in our midst had value, that everyone in the group has the right to be heard and to put their ideas out there, that instead of a few rich men going behind closed doors to decide the fate of the rest of us, that we would gather in open general assemblies that everyone took a turn in, that we were all leaders and nobody was. I am proud to have been part of this last year here at the courthouse. We were one of thousands of groups that sprang up around the world in solidarity with Occupy Wall Street. We came down on the 7th of October and hung up some banners and held the first of many general assemblies. We have come a long way since that day. And that is what we are here to commemorate. And I hope to move forward, because that is the true legacy of Occupy. We have shown the world that we are not going to take it. We have changed the conversation in America and become part of that long history along the road to a more perfect union. The process was transformative for me. I had always been an activist, or so I thought. But for the first time in my life, I was involved in the struggle every waking hour. I was able to see that for many of those around me, it was transformative as well. You cannot experience a true community with the type of aspirational goals that we had growing here and not be changed. Yeah. I have a few words from some folks. Hans sends his wishes of love for everyone. Yay. And says that you may break my ribs, but you will never break my spirit. Pat Kanzler sends her love. She is unable to be here with us tonight, but we have her flag hanging down on the corner. Many of the folks that I see around me tonight, it is very emotional to have you all back, and thank you all for coming. We pitched a tent or two, and that grew into a camp, that grew into a community. And that was not what the capitalists wanted. When they do it in Tahrir Square, they sent the Secretary of State out to praise it. When it happened at UC Davis, they sent the militarized police out to pepper spray it. We effected a response throughout the nation from those in power. Violent repression. We scared the fuck out of those people inside this courthouse. The failure of capitalism could not be on display to a docile public. They were paid so highly to keep appeased. They tried to label us terrorists and a security threat. They smiled and nodded, made nice in public, and then all of a sudden, they struck with an iron fist in the form of riot troops. We were no different than the rest of the country, with our comrades going to jail cells and to hospitals. When I'm speaking, I like to try and keep it short, so I'm going to kind of skip ahead a little bit here. Many of you are familiar with the assassinated leader from India, Mr. Gandhi, and something he said rings true of what we have done here. First, they ignore you. That is the root of the problem, where it began. For decades, society ignored the plight of those at the bottom. That group that must be sacrificed to their capitalist god market forces. Then they ridiculed you. Poo-pooed and peed on the bank became a meme, with Defegate becoming national news. When a member of the media came, it was to find the weirdest person in the crowd, Oklahoma, to get a 5-second soundbite of crazy hippies and their hobo camp. Those inside the building tried to play us off and hoped we would go home. Then they fight you. 7 November rolled around and the chief of BPD had a plan, and the DA gave the order to go get them. That night they arrested dozens, injured a few, stole the property of those that have the least. What followed was a calculated series of attacks on members of Occupy Eureka, unjust imprisonment, theft of property, destructions of signs, bogus arrests, complete disregard for constitutional and human rights. And then you win. We went to court and kicked their ass.
Yeah.
Hung jury. Case dismissed in the interest of justice.
Woo-hoo.
Declined to prosecute.
Yeah.
Not guilty on all counts.
Woo.
When they ginned up some AstroTurf group to take back the courthouse, we turned out the power of the people, and the power of the people didn't stop.
Yeah.
We sent them packing back to their sad little lives of hatred for anything different. We held our vigils out here in front of the courthouse, and the sheriffs were forced to drop their heads as they walked sheepishly by, having been taught that we the people were the sovereigns. Janelle has filed a lawsuit. I do not see her here tonight. Oh,
She was there, yeah, there she is.
and I feel confident that she will prevail. Ordinance 2477 will be overturned.
Woo-hoo.
We outlasted the fence around the grass, have gotten some of the most odious sections of the ordinance on the chopping block. We forced them to return our property, our signs, and most of all, we forced them to stop arresting us.
Yeah.
To some extent, the problems I was just speaking about were sort of side issues. We were engaged in a battle simply for the right to be here to protest most of the time we were here, but that did not really prevent us from getting our message out. You have saddled us with a system that is wrong, and we will not sit quietly by while you continue to destroy our communities. No, you will not cut down old growth trees to widen the road so that you can pull the tanks right up into our front yards.
No,
We will not become slaves to the company store. We will not allow you to give million-dollar bribes from Headwaters slush funds. Human rights are most in need of defense for the powerless in society. Sleep is as much a necessity as food and water. We endured in the cold winter rains out here in the hopes that soon no one would have to. We are raising the minimum wages for working people here in Eureka. Many of you have little faith in government and less faith in the ballot box, but as Malcolm X once said, by any means necessary.
Good.
The petitions are here on the table. If you live and vote in the city of Eureka, please sign it before you leave. The last year has been exhaustive for many in our community. The godfather of our little Occupy, Jack Mountain, is here tonight, and I'm glad to see that he is feeling better.
Yay.
What I would like to leave you with is this. I say, we only lose when we quit. I am truly fortunate to have been part of this action. I met some special people that I am proud to call my comrades. Men and women that are willing to stand together and say no more. You had your chance to run the world and you fucked it up. Now it is time for you to go away and let us try to fix it. You are capitalism, you are fascism, you are totalitarianism, you are globalization, you are financialization, You are hatred and you are greed. You will no longer poison our air, our water, our food supply, and our minds. We will not tolerate your wars against other countries and against the environment. We are human beings, and you will treat us each with the dignity that accords.
Yay!
Thank you, James. I know we don't need leaders, but if we did, I would nominate James.
Yay!
This is a poem I wrote for last year. I just wanted to recite it again. It's still current. Remember when they were asking us all the time, well, what are your demands? Well, they didn't want to hear that either. Once we occupied a garden. Then some devil came out of our divided hearts and minds and said, what are your demands? Knowledge, we said, the difference between truth and lies. Stop your war against heaven and earth. So we left the garden, occupied the devil's universities and draft boards, missile silos and nukes, Pine Ridge and Alcatraz and People's Park. Okay, said the devil, we got multicultural studies for the rich and a volunteer army for the poor. So we left those occupations and moved into gardens, the backcountry, small towns and neighborhoods, occupying North America one plot at a time. But what are your demands? That devil said again. To live in harmony with nature, to re-inhabit North America. Well, okay, said the devil, just don't mess with global capital. So we got medical pot, heirloom tomatoes. The devil got Washington, Wall Street, occupied Afghanistan, invaded our private lives, foreclosed on our homes, drove us out into the streets. So now we're back. And a year later we're back again. And what are your demands, says the old devil. He has divided us into rich and poor, militarized our police, occupied our land, taken our homes, outsourced our work. No more demands, we say. This occupation is our nation, our university, our army, our work. To live without the devil in every detail of our lives. To cast him out and the 1,000 corporate lies he uses to sell fear and kill hope and co-opt and silence our demands. Our occupation is to be here. Our hearts and minds are our demands. Wherever we are, there is the garden. And this time, we're not leaving. Thank you. Occupy Eureka.
All right.
I think I'm ready.